All right, guys, you know what time it is. Yeah, getting some American history on. I'm not even gonna go into a long tirade. We're just gonna start reading here. I'm not sure how much time I have, so I'm just gonna give it my best shot here. I got a friend who's calling me some point. Don't know exactly when, so I might have to stop in the middle if she calls. But anyway, we're gonna learn about the settlement of California today. That's a pretty interesting topic, the settlement of California, historically. All right, so here we go. The settlement of California. California was also a powerful magnet for settlers. The region had first felt the influence of European culture in 1769, when Spain, concerned about Russian seal traders moving south along the Pacific coast from Alaska, sent a naval expedition to settle the region. The Spanish discovered San Francisco Bay and constructed presidios, military garrisons, in San Diego and Monterey. Even more important, Franciscan friars, led by Junipero Serra, established a Catholic mission in San Diego. Over the next 50 years, Franciscans built 20 more missions spaced a day's journey apart along the coast from San Diego northward to San Francisco. The mission-centered culture was quite different from those in Texas and New Mexico, where the original missions were converted into secular communities, and the property was divided among the Indians. In California, the missions were much larger, more influential, and longer lasting. By the 19th century, Spanish Catholic missionaries, aided by Spanish soldiers, controlled most of the Native Americans living along the California coast. All right. So the California coast was controlled by the Spanish. The friars, priests, enticed Indians into coastal missions by offering gifts or impressing them with magical religious rituals. Once inside the missions, these Indians were baptized as Catholics, taught Spanish, and stripped of their cultural heritage. So that's how they're going to do it, just like that. Just bring them on in, change them over, right? Yeah, there's a picture here. I'll show you guys. The Spanish mission Santa Clara de Asis in California, 1777, was one of a series of religious outposts founded by Spanish Catholics to spread the Christian doctrine to the Native Americans. Once part of the missions, Native Americans were stripped of their heritage and forced to work on mission lands. Here's a picture of one of those old places like that. Yeah, seen things like that in movies, basically. Catholic missions. The California Catholic missions served as churches, villages, fortresses, homes, schools, shops, farms, and outposts of Spanish rule. They quickly became agricultural enterprises, producing crops, livestock, clothing, and household goods, both for profit and to supply the neighboring presidios. Indians provided most of the labor. Instead of wages, Indian laborers received clothing, food, housing, and religious instruction. That's payment, religious instruction. Rebellious Native Americans were whipped or imprisoned. And, oh man, they say you're going to learn today. They were whipped or imprisoned, and mission Indians died at an alarming rate. I wonder why. Their souls stolen right from them. One friar reported that of every 4 Indian children born, 3 die in their first or second year, while those who survive do not reach the age of 25. Wow. Of every 4 Indian children born, 3 die in the first or second year. Dang. Infectious diseases, and they didn't live by 25, past 25 really. Infectious disease was the primary threat, but the grueling labor regimen took a high toll as well. The Native American population along the California coast declined from 72,000 in 1769, 72,000 to 18,000 in 1821. 50 years. it's a 54,000 decrease. I think that's right. Saving souls cost many lives. With Mexican independence in 1821, yeah, that's a very costly, very, very telling sentence right there. Saving souls cost many lives. With Mexican saving souls, okay. With Mexican independence in 1821, the Spanish missions slowly fell into disuse. By the time the first American settlers began to trickle into California, they found a vast, beautiful province with a small, scattered population of 6,000 Mexicans, ruled by a few dominant caballeros or rancheros, gentlemen, who owned the largest ranches in the province, much like the planters who lorded over the lower South. Hispanic Californians, called Californios, took comfort that Mexico City, the capital, was too far away to exercise effective control over them. Between 1821 and 1841, Spanish-speaking Californians, as well as many recent American arrivals, staged 10 revolts against Mexican governors. The shift from Spanish to Mexican rule did produce one dramatic change in California. In 1824, Mexico passed a colonization act that granted hundreds of enormous ranchos, estates, to prominent Mexicans. Yet the rancheros, largest landowners, wanted more, especially the vast estates controlled by the Catholic missions along the East Coast. I'm trying to get this. Oh yeah, I had it set up like that. Oh yeah, I can read it like this. Yes, I remember that part. Set it on the steering wheel. Everything's good. Everything's good in the hood when you can read. That is a very true statement. Everything's good in the hood when you can read. If you can read, everything is great. Oh man. Yeah, let's see here. The shift from Spanish to Mexican rule did produce one dramatic change in California. In 1824, Mexico passed a colonization act that granted hundreds of enormous ranchos, estates, to prominent Mexicans. Yet the rancheros, largest landowners, wanted more, especially the vast estates controlled by the Catholic missions along the coast. Was that greed? I think that might have been greed. Greedy a little bit there, maybe. Need more context. In 1833 to 1834, the rancheros persuaded the Mexican government to pass the Secularization Act. The ruling was disastrous for the Native Americans. It allowed the government to take the missions, release the Indians from church control, and transfer the missions' farmlands to rancheros. Within a few years, the government issued some 700 new rancho grants of 4,500 to 50,000 acres along the California coast. These, got a little bit of cars coming by for a minute. These sprawling ranches resembled southern plantations, but the death rate of their... Yeah, not going to force it here. One more. Sorry guys, it's just how it is. Let's redo this here because I'm not quite getting that. Oh yeah, okay. These sprawling ranches assembled southern plantations, but the death rate of their Indian workers was twice as high as that among enslaved blacks in the lower South. John Sutter. All right, Sutter, that's a Canadian name, but not exclusively. Among the most ambitious white pioneers in California was 44-year-old John Augustus Sutter, a German-Swiss entrepreneur who left behind his wife, 4 children, crushing debts, and a warrant for his arrest to make his fortune. At the junction of the Sacramento and American rivers, later the site of the city of Sacramento, Sutter hired local Indians and whites from America and Europe to build a fort with walls 18 feet tall to protect the settlers and their workshops. The fort also served as a fur trading post. Completed in 1843, Sutter's fort stood at the western end of the California Trail. Sutter set about creating a wilderness empire in the Sacramento Valley after convincing the Mexican government to grant him 230 square miles of land. In addition to trading furs, Indians made wool blankets and hats, cultivated vast acres of wheat and corn, and raised huge herds of cattle, sheep, hogs, and horses. Sutter paid his Indian workers, but he also whipped, jailed, and even executed Indians who disobeyed his orders. In the process, Sutter helped spur the American settlement of Hispanic California. By 1845, there were perhaps 800 American pioneers in California, along with approximately 10,000 Californios and some 150,000 Native Americans. An estimated 3,000 Americans. Why didn't the Native Americans just revolt and take over? I mean, they didn't know. An estimated 3,000 Americans survived the next year. The American migrants learned to speak Spanish, often embraced Catholicism, won Mexican citizenship, found Spanish and Native American spouses, and participated in local politics. California's Mexican governor, Pio Pico, warned in 1845, "We find ourselves threatened by hordes of Yankee immigrants who have already begun to flock into our country, and whose progress we cannot arrest." Here's a picture here for you. Sutter's Fort, marking the end of the California Trail. Sutter's Fort was a prominent trading hub that depended on the labor and craftsmanship of the Native Americans who worked for Sutter. There's Sutter's Fort. The Donner Party. Okay, interesting. Donner. Oh, shoot. Here we go. You ever heard about cannibalism in Donner's Pass? Anyway, this is about cannibalism. The Donner Party. The most tragic story of pioneers traveling to California involved... Man, Donner. In Reno, it's not too far from Donner's Pass, honestly. The most tragic story of pioneers traveling to California involved the group headed by George Donner, a 62-year-old farmer from Illinois. In mid-April 1846, Donner led his family and 74 other settlers from Springfield, Illinois, to the Oregon Trail, but tragedy interrupted their journey. Mistakes were made from the outset. The group started too late in the spring, overloaded their wagons, and took a shortcut that turned into a disaster. They had brought too little food, water, and clothing, and their inexperience would prove to be fatal. In the Utah Territory's Wasatch Mountains, the party got lost, wasting 3 precious weeks. Then, crossing the desert before the Great Salt Lake, they suffered in the heat. Over 100 oxen were lost, forcing them to abandon several wagons with precious supplies. When the Donner Party, but somebody was happy to find that stuff. When the Donner Party reached Truckee Pass, aka the Truckee River, there's a connection there between the Truckee River, which runs through Nevada. Yeah, boy, here we go. I love this. Yeah. When the Donner Party reached Truckee Pass in eastern California, the last barrier in the Sierra Nevada before they would reach the Sacramento Valley, a 2-week-long blizzard trapped them in 2 separate camps. 2-week-long blizzard. Good night. By December, the pioneers, half of them children, oh my gosh, were marooned by 20 feet of snow. I thought maroon was like left behind, abandoned, but no. But still, that's bad. Yeah, it's still bad. Yeah, for sure. Were marooned by 20 feet of snow with only enough food to last through the end of the month. 17 of the strongest members, calling themselves the Forlorn Hope, decided to cross the pass on their own, but they were trapped by more snow. 2 turned back, 8 more died of exposure and starvation. Only 7 of the Forlorn Hope group reached the Sacramento Valley. Only 7 of 17. Back at the main camps, the survivors had slaughtered and eaten the last of the livestock, then killed 2 Indian guides and ate them. Just before he died, Billy Graves urged his daughters to eat his corpse. All right. You don't hear that every day. The daughters were appalled at first, but soon saw no other choice. Daddy tasted good. No, oh my gosh, that's horrible. When 2 other members of the party died, they too were eaten. By the time a rescue party reached the camps 2 months later, 13 people had died and cannibalism had become commonplace. The rescuers were appalled to find around the fire the bones, skulls, and half-eaten limbs of those who had died. One settler noted in his diary, Mrs. Murphy said here, oh my gosh, I hope this isn't too bad. Mrs. Murphy said here yesterday that she thought she would commence on Milt and eat him. Poor Milt. As the survivors were led over the pass, George Donner, too weak and distressed to walk, stayed behind to die. His wife, Tanzine, chose to die with him. Dang. So, there you go. There's some troublesome, there's some sad stories there. Alright, got a couple cars coming through here, and then we're going to read about Texas. If you guys want. Are you guys still in this? Should we stop? I need to keep reading, and it's easier to read it this way, honestly. So, see if I can read with a mint in my mouth. Let's read. Okay, let's keep going. We read about California. Now we're gonna read about Texas. And if my friend calls, we'll have to stop. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see. Just relax. It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right. Look at that beautiful history. Oh my God. Okay. American settlements in Texas. The American passion for Western land focused on the northern Mexican province of Texas, a vast land sweeping westward from Louisiana to the Rocky Mountains in the north and the Rio Grande in the south. Rio Grande is a Spanish phrase meaning big river. During the 1820s, the United States had twice offered to buy Texas, but the Mexican government refused to sell in the 1820s. By 1823, some 3,000 Americans, or Texians, also called Anglos because they spoke English, were living in Texas in violation of Mexican law. The unstable Mexican government could not prevent the illegal immigrants from America trespassing into Texas. Between 1824 and 1858, Mexico had 50 pitiful presidents who turned the government into a comic opera. Dang. The leading promoter of American settlement in Mexican-controlled Texas was Stephen Fuller Austin. Steve Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin. A visionary land developer, impresario. His father, Moses Austin, had convinced the Mexican government that American settlers could provide a buffer on the northern frontier between the feared Comanche Indians and the Mexican settlements to the south. The Mexican government agreed to legalize American immigration if the settlers converted to Catholicism and did not bring slaves. Moses Austin died before he could enact his plan, but his son Stephen set it in motion in 1822. Thousands of hardy souls settled in Austin's Anglo-Texas colony on the lower Brazos and Colorado rivers. Stephen Austin intended his colony to be a thriving community of cooperating families that would redeem Texas from the wilderness. Americans who rushed to settle in Austin's Anglo colony in East Texas received 177 free acres and had access to thousands of acres of common pasture for ranching. Austin received 65,000 acres from the Mexican government. 65,000 acres? Good night. Most of the Anglos were ranchers or farmers drawn to the fertile, inexpensive lands in the river valleys. A few were wealthy planters who brought slaves with them despite the law against it. By 1830, far more Americans lived in coastal Texas than did Mexicans. About 20,000 Anglo-Texans and 1,000 enslaved African Americans brought to harvest and grow cotton. In 1828, Jose Maria Sanchez, a Mexican official, visited Austin's settlement. Afterwards, he reported that the effort by Americans to take Texas from Mexico will start from this colony. Because the Mexican government was not taking vigorous measures to prevent it. For their part, the settlers displayed a racist contempt for the brown-skinned Mexican people who could not sustain an effective government. All right, interesting. The Texas War for Independence is going to be coming up on the Alamo. Mexican officials grew so worried about the intentions of the Americans living in Texas that in April 1830 they abruptly outlawed immigration from the United States. They also banned any additional enslaved people and built forts housing Mexican soldiers to enforce the new law. Americans who viewed the Mexicans with contempt kept coming anyway, as illegal immigrants. By 1835, the Texians and their enslaved blacks outnumbered the Tejanos 10-1. Wow, it's quite a lot, big outnumbering right there. In a letter to his cousin in 1835, Stephen Austin left no doubt about his plans. It is very evident that Texas should be effectually and fully Americanized. Texas must be a slave country. It is no longer a matter of doubt. Interesting. Here we go with the slavers again. The slavers all kind of trying to make slaves everywhere. Changing political circumstances in Mexico aggravated the growing tensions. General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna served as the Mexican president 11 times between 1833 and 1854. Head honcho. Texians feared that Santa Anna planned to free our slaves and to make slaves of us. When the Mexican president eliminated exemptions for slaveholders and imprisoned Stephen Austin in 1834 for inciting rebelliousness, Texians began transforming themselves into revolutionaries. In the fall of 1835, Texians rebelled against the despotism of the Mexican government. A furious Santa Anna ordered all Americans expelled from Texas and all rebels arrested and executed. Them's fighting words right there. As sporadic fighting erupted, hundreds of armed volunteers from southern states rushed to assist the 30,000 Texians in the Texas Revolution against a Mexican nation of 7 million people. The sword is drawn, Stephen Austin proclaimed, promising 800 acres of land to anyone who joined the rebellion. The Alamo. At San Antonio in southern Texas, Santa Anna's 1,800-man army assaulted a group of fewer than 200 Texians. That's not a fair fight. Texians, Tejanos, and recently arrived American volunteers who were holed up in an abandoned Catholic mission called the Alamo. Leading the outmanned rebels was William B. Travis, a hot-tempered, pro-slavery 26-year-old Alabama lawyer and teacher. They always have to call people pro-slavery, just to make them, just so no one can look up to them. They make sure that you know that they own slaves, therefore they shouldn't be a hero. They always do that. Regardless if the person was a hero for other reason, at all. He ignored orders to retreat, insisting that death was preferable to disgrace. Among the Americans at the Alamo, the most celebrated was David Crockett. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. The Tennessee frontiersman, bear hunter, and sharpshooter who had fought Indians under Andrew Jackson, who was not my favorite president, and served as an anti-Jackson Whig congressman. Having lost his re-election bid, David Crockett didn't really like Andrew Jackson after all, I guess. Having lost his re-election bid, he encouraged those Tennesseans who voted against him to go to hell, while I go to Texas. Upon his arrival in San Antonio, Crockett told the Alamo defenders that he had come to aid you all that I can in your noble cause. Wait, say that again. Crockett told the Alamo defenders that he had come to aid you all that I can in your noble cause. All right. Also, among those in the Alamo was Juan Seguin. The son of a prominent Tejano family in San Antonio. At age 18, he had become the mayor, alcalde, of San Antonio. Like many other Mexicans living in Texas, he resented Santa Anna's tyranny so much that he joined the Texas independence movement and was made a captain in the Texian army. In February 1836, Santa Anna demanded that the Americans in the Alamo surrender. Travis answered with cannon fire and a letter, promising that he was determined to die like a soldier. I shall never surrender or retreat. Victory or death, in all caps. Santa Anna's forces then launched a series of assaults. Oh, got another picture. During the fight, you'll get this in a little bit. During the fight, Travis sent Seguin to gather reinforcements and deliver a message to Sam Houston. Sam Houston was a bad dude, the commander of the Texian army. The Texans at the Alamo would never surrender or retreat. For 11 days, the Mexicans suffered heavy losses. Then before dawn on March 6th, the Alamo defenders awakened to the sound of Mexican bugles playing the dreaded De Gallo, take no prisoners. Wave after wave of Santa Anna's men attacked. They were twice forced back, but on the third try they broke through the Alamo's battered north wall. As Travis was directing his men, a bullet smashed into his forehead, killing him instantly. The rebels ran out of bullets but fought on with tomahawks, knives, and rifle butts. In the end, however, virtually all were killed. Sad. A few days later, Juan Seguin returned with more troops, only to discover that they were too late. The victory at the Alamo was costly for the Mexicans. However, as they lost more than 600 soldiers and also alienated many Texians, Victory at the Alamo was costly for the Mexicans, however, as they lost more than 600 soldiers and also alienated many Texians. While Santa Anna proclaimed a glorious victory, his aide wrote in his diary, "One more such glorious victory, and we are finished." That's what they call a glorious victory. It's costly. The furious fighting at the Alamo turned the rebellion into a war for Texas independence. On March 2nd, 1836, delegates from all 59 Texas towns met at Washington on the Brazos, 150 miles northeast of San Antonio. There, they signed a Declaration of Independence from Mexican control. Over the next 17 days, they drafted a constitution establishing the Republic of Texas. 2 weeks later, at the Battle of Coleto, a Mexican force again defeated a smaller Texian army. The Mexicans marched 465 captured Texians to a fort in the nearby town of Goliad. Despite pleas from his men to show mercy, Santa Anna ordered the captives killed as pirates and outlaws. Dang, it's harsh, man. On March 27th, 1836, Palm Sunday, 303 Texians were marched out of Goliad and shot. The massacres at the Alamo and Goliad fueled a burning desire for revenge among the Texians. This pictures of the Alamo. David Crockett, pictured fighting with his rifle over his head, after running out of bullets, joined the legendary battle to defend the Alamo against the Mexican army. See Davy Crockett. Sam Houston. All right, here we go. We're going to get a picture of him real quick just to get it kicking, get it popping here. Sam Houston. Sam Houston, having led the Texian... Buddy with the loud truck. Having led the Texans to a sweeping victory over the Mexicans in the Battle of San Jacinto, Houston went on to serve as the first president of the Republic of Texas. All right. The commander-in-chief of the still... We're almost done, guys. The commander-in-chief of the still-forming Texian army was Sam Houston, a fearless, hard-drinking frontiersman. Born in Virginia and raised in eastern Tennessee. As a young teen, he had left his widowed mother and 8 siblings and lived among the Cherokee. Dang, he just left home. Lived among the Cherokees for a time, learning their language and customs. He also developed a lifelong weakness for alcohol. All right. Sorry, buddy. That's a tough habit to break right there. Like David Crockett, Sam Houston had served under General Andrew Jackson during the War of 1812. At the Battle of Horseshoe Bend in Alabama in 1814, he was seriously wounded but insisted on rejoining his unit, only to be shot twice in the right arm and shoulder. Jackson marveled at his tenacity and became a lifelong friend and mentor. After the war, Houston became an attorney, a U.S. congressman, and in 1827, governor of Tennessee. In 1829, despondent and often drunk, Houston resigned the governorship and went home to the Cherokee and Arkansas Territory. There he married a Cherokee woman and was formally adopted by the Cherokee Nation. In December 1832, he moved to Texas, became a Mexican citizen, and started a law practice. Interesting. That might be it, guys. No, we're going to keep on going for a little bit. When the Americans in Texas declared their independence from Mexico on March 4th, 1836, Houston became commander-in-chief of the armies. Sam Houston, probably why it's Houston, Texas. Ooh, just figured that out. Houston became commander-in-chief of the armies of the Republic of Texas. Citizens of Texas, he wrote in a proclamation, yours must be defended. The oppressors must be driven from our soil. Houston was utterly fearless, a quality sorely needed against the much larger Mexican army. All right, the Battle of San Jacinto. After learning of the massacre at the Alamo, Sam Houston led his outnumbered troops on a large strategic retreat to buy time, while hoping that Santa Anna's pursuing army would make a mistake. On April 21st, 1836, the cocky Mexican general let his guard down. Houston's army of 900 screaming fighters caught Santa Anna's 1,600 troops napping near the San Jacinto River. That's what you get. About 25 miles southeast of the border of the about 25 miles southeast of the modern city of Houston. At 4:30 in the afternoon, the Texians charged the Mexican line, screaming, "Remember the Alamo, remember Goliad." That's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. The Texians and Tejanos overwhelmed the Mexicans. The battle lasted only 18 minutes. Dang. But Houston's troops spent the next 2 hours fleeing Mexican soldiers. It was, said a Texian, a frightful sight to behold. Some 650 Mexicans were killed and 300 captured. The Texians lost only 11 men. General Santa Anna, who had been enjoying an opium-induced nap. Well, we know what that guy does now. When the battle erupted, escaped in his underwear, only to be captured the next day. Brought before Sam Houston, the Mexican leader begged the American leader to be generous to the vanquished. Nice try, buddy. I don't think that's going to work out for you, especially considering what you did. Houston replied, "You should have remembered that at the Alamo." In the end, Santa Anna bought his freedom by signing a treaty recognizing the independence of the Republic of Texas. The Texas Revolution had succeeded in just 7 weeks. The Lone Star Republic. In 1836, the Lone Star Republic, as Texians called their new nation, legalized slavery and banned free blacks. Voters elected Sam Houston as its first president and voted overwhelmingly for annexation to the United States. But statehood for Texas soon became embroiled in a sectional dispute over slavery. President Andrew Jackson eagerly wanted Texas to join the nation. He knew, however, that adding Texas as a slave state would ignite an explosive quarrel between North and South that would fracture the Democratic Party and endanger the election of New Yorker Martin Van Buren, his hand-picked successor. Woo. Worse, any effort to add Texas to the Union would likely mean a war with Mexico, which refused to recognize Santa Anna's granting of Texan independence. So Jackson delayed official recognition of the Republic of Texas until his last day in office, early in 1837. Van Buren, Jackson's successor, did as predicted. He avoided all talk of Texas annexation during his single term as president. All right, we're going to keep on going next time. Starts to get into the Tyler presidency in Texas. John Tyler, etc., etc. Anyway, enjoy the day, guys.